Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Raising Excellence, the most important hour of your week. Hello, I'm Michael, the MC and Opportunity Ambassador for today's show. And today's show's title is Are You Living a Myth? With me today are my favorite co host, Agnieszka, our psychosomatic illuminator. Oh, you're on.
I was muted. I was all
Yes.
being friendly and everything. Nice to be here, everyone.
And Dennis, our freedom facilitator from the far side of the lake.
Greetings and blessed love, everybody.
All right, so we're going to be talking about myths today. And certainly, myths are a subject that have a lot of interesting aspects to them. But where do we begin?
With the
Where
definition.
is the problem? Okay, the definition. You got the definition?
Oh, yeah, and there are many. Um, uh, wow, give me a second. I will pull them up because I don't want to shorten your.
Well, okay, I've got it. I've got it from the Encyclopedia Britannica. Myth is a symbolic narrative, usually of unknown origin, at least partially traditional, that ostensibly relates actual events and that is especially associated with religious beliefs. It
Yeah.
is distinguished from symbolic behavior, cult ritual, and symbolic places or objects, temples, icons. Myths are specific accounts of gods or superhuman beings involved in extraordinary events or circumstances in a time that is unspecified, but which is understood as existing apart from ordinary human experience.
Okay, that is an interesting one. I found one on the Merriam-Webster. What is that? Dictionary? Yeah, and it gives us one, two, three, four definitions or four underpoints of the definition. So 1A says a usually traditional story of ostensibly historical events that serves to unfold part of the worldview of a people or explain a practice, belief, or natural phenomenon. Um, and then the second one is a popular belief or tradition that has grown up around something or someone, especially one embodying the ideals and institutions of a society or segment of society. Um, then also as part of that one, an unfounded or false notion. The third one says a person or thing having only an imaginary or unverifiable existence. And the last one is the whole body of myths. As an example would be like a student of Greek myth. And so that's quite a chunk to trying to define this thing. Do we have anything else? Agnieszka, did you come across anything
So,
regarding defining
well,
what a myth is?
well, I have a lot of different ideas about it, and I've been studying it for years. But what I wanted to note is something that you said. Basically, what they're saying is that myth is the total body of knowledge that we have in society, basically an ancient knowledge. At the same time, it is all imaginary and made up, and none of it is actually real. Is that what we're reading in those definitions? It's everything we know, and none of it is real.
Ah,
Or am I like extrapolating too much?
so I think this will
Well,
probably be an answer
go
to
ahead.
it, which is the etymology of the word myth, which is quite interesting. Um, it says, well, it has a French root, but it's directly from modern Latin, mythos, which again goes back to Greek, also mythos,
Mythos.
speech, mythos, speech, thought, word, discourse, conversation, story, saga, tale, myth, anything delivered by word of mouth. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
and see how that is such a wide variety of things. Because on one hand, gossip and lies are delivered by the word of mouth. But on the other hand, the greatest wisdom and the greatest knowledge in the whole world is also delivered by word of mouth. And in the ancient times, people used to, like, everything was memorized. And I don't think that's because they didn't know how to write. I think that's because it was a specific art of memorization, specific level that you brought your brain to with memorizing large quantities of data or of knowledge, you know? And that actually helped people embody that knowledge. Sorry, I'm doing it, Dennis. I'll stop.
There's a there's a book called The Storyteller's Secret, and essentially it talks about how information was conveyed, and really that the advance of human development, mental development, was really as a result of understanding fire and utilizing fire, which gave people that extra time to like be awake and discuss things, and so they would sit around the fire and essentially tell stories, and stories are something that is really useful. And I do believe that what our mind is kind of really kind of acclimated toward is stories. And
Okay, can I
so,
just can I just object to one part of what you said though?
sure.
Because I really, okay, so communication and connection are one of the core human characteristics. Humans are
Hmm.
absolutely herd animals. They are not, they don't do well alone in the woods. You know, some of them survive alone in the woods, but they're really herd animals. They like to congregate in places, you know, smaller, bigger
Hmm.
herds, but they like to congregate.
Tribes. Yeah.
And so, okay, if you don't think of them as animals, tribes. But I just don't believe that people needed fire to communicate, to connect, to share, to explore. You know what I mean? Like it's such a
Well, I was
naive
just
notion because our world is fully abundant with everything. Nobody needs to work 8 hours a day in order to feed themselves. If they were just, you know what I mean? Like there are certain climates that are less conducive to survival, but you can still spend, 20 hours a week creating your own survival plan and spend the rest actually conversing and connecting with other humans.
Following
Fire,
up,
I don't think
well,
it's
following
I
up,
was
necessary.
just explaining what the book said, but
Yeah, yeah,
that
I know, but I just got triggered.
you
It,
see,
it
I
was just
found
so.
interesting.
should look into that.
I find that the
But
point interesting that you brought in, Mike, which is about the value of telling stories and of storytelling, and it reminded me about the different and various techniques that are there for memorization. You know, to improve your brain, to improve your capacity to memorize things, and there's quite a few experts out there who do amazing things and who teach crowds and can teach you within a few minutes how to memorize. I don't know,
mhm,
50 names, which you couldn't do or you didn't know you could before. And I remember that some of those techniques are based on a storyline that you make up in your mind. And I found that really interesting because is does that mean that our ability to tell stories and to also receive stories, and the fact whether we expose ourselves to stories, whether it's like through books or through some like real people telling us a story, or us actually making up stories and telling them, our children and our friends, um, if that has something to do with our mental capacity, so to say, or with our human potential.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would say, if you look at the stars and the constellations, each one of those constellations, and there's a vast, large number of them, and each one of them has got myths tied to it from different cultures and so forth. What's interesting is a lot of them have a lot of similarities. So it's really interesting. But if you look at all those constellations and all those stories, that's an encyclopedia in itself worth of information that's basically conveyed through images and stories about those images, through the stars, which to me suggests that there's a lot of information around us.
So, what is the problem if you cannot retain, are not aware of the information of the stories that are around us? Is it is a result of it that you don't really grasp, where you are, why you're here, that you can't really make sense of many things that are going on around you, and that you really, like a ship in the storm, wherever the wind blows from, that's where you go, and you don't really have
Like a
um,
flag.
ability
Yeah.
to steer, or you don't even have the you don't feel like you have some kind of control of where you're going, and you feel like you're going wherever the wind blows, so to say.
Well, I mean,
Well, and the bit wind
look at
blows
this. Oh,
propaganda. Sorry,
yeah, well,
go.
look at the stories of the nationalities. Like what makes Americans are really myths. They're American myths, and I would suggest that most of those are not accurate, and certainly when it comes to like the modern myths and the modern media, a great deal of the stories that we're being told are just repeated versions of things that, like Shakespeare's plays, for example. If you look at soap operas and most of the television shows, they're really just rewriting a lot of the Shakespeare plays, and really
That's not
retelling
really
that same
that's not
things.
really how it is. I mean, yes, they rewrite Shakespeare's plays, that's true, but it's a deeper issue than that. What it is that, Carl Jung talked about this, Joseph Campbell talked about this in his Hero with a Thousand Faces book. um, every story has a basis of archetypal framework, right? So there are these archetypal stories that are part of our society, and they're being retold in many different ways depending on the generation you are. And it is my opinion, or my observation, that the older the stories you get, the more archetypal interpersonal relations, wisdom, interactions with other people, the more complex the information becomes. And as it comes closer and closer to the modern era, it kind of flattens into this two-dimensional: Johnny likes Betty, Betty kisses Johnny, Betty has a freak out, then Johnny makes up to her, and they get together. I mean, did I just say Grease, or what story did I just tell? Like, which movie was this? It was all the
Shakespeare.
movies, right? It was Shakespeare too. It was everybody, because it's a thing, right? But what we have to see, I think, in our society, the most important thing is to watch where your stories are coming from, because you're living stories no matter what. You're a human. You're a storyteller. You're a story receiver. You tell stories every time you interact with other humans. But sometimes we don't curate the stories that come into our psyche. We don't discern what's coming in. When we're standing at the supermarket checkout line and we're glancing at the crap newspapers that tell us that aliens abducted a woman and her baby, that stuff, that's stories too. And are those the stories that you want to blueprint your mind upon? Are Fox News the stories that you want to blueprint your mind upon? I mean,
So,
what do you want to live? What myths do you want to live?
so this might clarify like a little bit, and also bring another dimension to it, which we haven't touched upon as yet in terms of myths. And this is also from the same source that I was quoting, the etymology of the word, and this is a quote from, this is Oxford Dictionary, which says, myths are stories about divine beings, generally arranged in a coherent system. They are um, revered as true and sacred. They are endorsed by rulers and priests, and closely linked to religion. Once this link is broken, and the actors in the story are not regarded as gods, but as human heroes, giants or fairies, it's no longer a myth, but a folk tale, where the central actor is divine, but the story is trivial. The result is religious legend, not myth. And that's interesting because it brings in the whole religious connection into it, and also the differentiation between myth and between folklore or folk tales, which I wasn't aware of before. And adding to that, we have a comment from Rodin, who is saying, stories have played integral part in our social evolution. Yeah, which is what Mike was hitting on earlier. Glad to be with you, Rodin.
Well, I definitely think that Carl Jung's work in regard to his background was with understanding of symbology as well as psychoanalytics, and the combination is what he came up with, the archetypes and that kind of thing. But I do want to put a little bit of a warning there. Is like when we talk about the literature and the folk tales and all the stuff that we have that's part of our history. and especially when it comes to you know what they consider like our human nature, it is skewed to one particular direction, and that does give me a little bit of caution when it comes to like what is human nature. And but I do feel like when you have things that are repeated incessantly, that is conditioning, that is programming, and one needs to really be hesitant to or at least be very skeptical of things that are constantly being repeated. And when it comes to media and movies and television and the stories that were told about like stuff like, all the things that characterize people into different dichotomies, we've got to be very careful about what that is, because there are Ponzi schemes after Ponzi schemes that people are falling for, and they're falling for them because they think that that's part of who their identity is.
I have a good
Yes,
story about that. Can I tell my story? Or
of
do
course.
you have something pressing?
No, go ahead, go ahead, Agnes.
So, you know how all the movies and TV, they always tell us how, like, if there is like an emergency, people are going to go and throw like at each other's throats. They're going to rob each other. They're going to kill each other. It's going to be havoc and mayhem. We're all going to have to hide in shelters and hope that bad guys don't get us. This story, this theme seems to repeat itself in modern movies and stories and books, like in modern era, a lot. But when you actually go through like a crisis, like if there is a natural disaster, like a flood or a fire or a snowstorm that like cuts off all power and everything to a city, when something like that happens, and I've been in a few of these in my lifetime, what actually happens is people come together, people stand up together, and they fight, like they protect each other. You know, they'll feed their last eggs to somebody who's hungry. And the whole mayhem, I mean, if that were to happen, that would happen with every natural disaster. But that's not, that's exactly the opposite for happen. That's not human nature.
And look what happened right now. Is that is maybe, I'm talking about the times we're living in, about this situation. Is that a myth as well?
inciting
Because that is
inciting
it.
violence is not a
That
natural
really,
disaster.
that is really like to the point what you're just saying. Because if you then create a scenario or a myth, if you want to call it that, which prevents people from doing exactly that, from coming together, from sticking together, from helping out each other, looking after each other, because you have so much fear mongering and started to break that, this natural, as you said, I would agree, that's a natural thing. If I listen, to 2 generations ago, here in Germany, the war, what was going on there, if you see, if you study, if you read, and if you listen to those who are still alive who were part of that, then that's exactly what happened. When they rebuilt Germany here, like the years after, it was amazing, like what people would get done. We call them the Trümmerfrauen, which were like the rumble women, rumble, like, because they, whatever was left of the cities and of the houses, they would work around the clock. There were barely any men left because they were all prisoners or they were killed. So women had to take care of those works and had to rebuild little by little, their houses and the towns. And so there are many stories and many examples in history that show that, the worse the situation, the more people actually come together and get together. And I feel that this is what certain people or certain forces are trying to break, this chain and this reaction of people getting together close by, the divide and conquer that we have mentioned so often.
So sad.
Yeah, I think definitely doing the opposite of what the authorities are recommending is definitely
You can't actually
probably a
say
healthy
that.
consideration.
I object. No, I don't really. But anyway, I just think that we don't need to worry about stuff like that. We don't need to worry about who says what, but just sort of like be a curator of your own life. Like choose the story you want to live and live that story. Don't allow other people or the propaganda. Like, I mean, think about it. The news systems are all owned by somebody. The drug companies, they're all owned by somebody, right? Like God gave you a free mind, a free will, use it.
Well, I think it jives with what we were talking about last week in regard to intuition. Like when we have human experiences, and that relates to like the myths that are out there, when the things that feel right because they chime with what your experience is as well as what your intuition is telling you, then more than likely that's definitely the basis for something that is more useful and more powerful than just the baloney myths that that glorify violence and glorify war and nationalism and all these other baloney things that as far as I'm concerned are just like eye color about ourselves that are really meaningless but
Mm.
are so pervasive and programmed and conditioned into us because they're repeated incessantly.
It seems to me
Just
that
think
the
about the
source
whole
of the
skin
problem
color.
really is that,
Sorry.
we are not aware of the myths that are surrounding us and that are influencing us. So there's a lack of awareness. So we're not able, and we haven't learned in many cases to distinguish, what is, reality, what is a myth, and then also, um, we, by not being aware of what is a myth, and that our life and that we are surrounded by myths, we also lose the opportunity of making a conscious choice, which myth we then choose, because I feel there's many super interesting myths and many, um, a lot of wisdom, uh, a lot of knowledge being passed through myths and through stories, as we called it earlier as well
Folk
at times,
tales.
folk tales,
Folk tales are
so so
full of
there's a
wisdom.
lot of things to learn and a lot of things to gather from that. But then, like you were pointing out, we should be able to differentiate between the ones that are really for us and that help us on our particular individual path. And I wouldn't dare to tell anyone, do this and follow that, or take this and take that. But I would enjoy to share the ones that work for me and that I think, make some kind of sense or that have helped me. And then, with the hopes and with the wish that, they might do the same for someone else. But I would never dare to say, oh, this is the right thing, this is the wrong thing. And that brings me even to the religious connotation from before. There's certainly much wisdom and many, you know great passages and quotes from, dare even say, almost all, religious texts. And but then also, it's up to interpretation. It's up to, people take the same passage and take the same quotation and are able to do all kind of somersaults with it and apply it to all different kind of means and ways. So it's really, it's not only what, but it's how you use it and how you apply it for your own self, and what the intention is that you have doing with it. Andrew Dane is saying, LOL, would people fighting for toilet paper in the early part of the pandemic, um, would that be a manifestation of the divide and conquer stories? What do you guys think?
Well, my opinion of the toilet. You guys want to know about the toilet paper? I mean, it's all about the base chakra, right? So these people are afraid, the fear, and it's all about that, like when you're afraid, your bowels are not working. So the toilet paper to me was all symbolic about that fear of survival, like letting go of the shits because you're so afraid, that kind of thing. Like on a symbolic level, I mean, it was all in the base chakra. Everything that was on the news at the time, everything that was all about survival, protection, all of that base stuff. And I think that's why I manifested with the toilet paper.
And fear too, yeah.
That's my
That's
opinion.
like a good, like, I haven't even seen it like that before. But it's also, like, you crap your pants when you're full of fear, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
so
Exactly.
you're basically preparing yourself in a way, with the toilet paper for the fear that's there to come, for the fear that you're also,
Well, but
that
it's
you have.
already being fed to you through the stories, through the megaphones throughout your cities, like people are walking around, you know what I mean? Like it's literally down to that these days. It's not just from the news, from the newsstands, from the, checkout counters, are like, not just that there's more now. And so you really have to be careful what myths you believe in and what myths you want to live, because you can choose your life.
What kind of items could we choose then, to hoard as people who are, not that fearful and not that full of fear?
Your
What
own skills.
I would hoard skills. Skills are a good one. I think friends are a good value.
Come on, there
I
must
would
be there must be something
say,
more materialistic, like, that we can gather and like buy off the shelves and stuff.
Why? What for?
For confident people, that don't, are not afraid to crop their pants.
If you're
But
confident, you believe in your own abilities, you don't need
Abundance.
to hoard anything.
Yeah.
Your life will come to you like as it comes to every bird and every animal in the forest, right? Things will unfold in a way that serves you best, as always. When you lose a home, there another home appears. When you lose a job or a way of making income, another opportunity appears, and it's up to you if you take it. But always, 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 there are opportunities that are surrounding you. No need to
Well,
hoard anything, except for
just
pens. I,
let's
I
work
really like these pens.
the ability to recognize the opportunities that are there, that surround us.
well, I would just say that in regard to myths that I think are just absolutely garbage, and such a paramount foundation of society these days, it is the glorification of war, and there is just absolutely no basis for that. But it is in everything, in all the literature. I mean, it's all. I mean, it just goes throughout the history, and it's definitely something that has been kept as supposedly our history is the just constant glorification of every empire and every conqueror. That all that is garbage.
You
From my
know,
own experience, I know that there's no glory in war, and that it is just a complete illusion. That
consider the source, Michael. Consider the source. You can find this glorification of war in the great books of the Western world. You can
certainly.
find this war in the Hollywood, right? You can find it in all sorts of places. But can you find the glorification of war in ancient folk tales? I'm talking like more than 500 years old. You know, so
Well,
here, okay, so that's
well,
the
but
bad,
to me, that's just one of the tests. That
right?
for me, if your society is glorifying war, glorifying people that you know continue to advance war, they they're that's a fraudulent myth.
Yeah, so okay, so but the fairy tales give us a blueprint for behavior. They do. And there's a repetitious, like an archetypal repetitious blueprint. I'm gonna give you like a 2 minute overview of it. And you will see that it appears everywhere. It appears throughout Hollywood, it appears in ancient folk tales and new folk tales, it appears everywhere. But do we pay attention? Who's paying attention to this? Okay, so this is like basic hero's journey, right? The hero is presented with a challenge or a problem, right? Sometimes it's an opportunity or sometimes it's a problem that he has to solve. In my favorite folktale, The Water of Life, the hero is presented with the problem that his mother is dying and there's no cure. The village woman doesn't have cure, the doctor doesn't have a cure, no one has a cure for this, right? And so he goes on an epic journey. But before he goes on an epic journey, he's told, no, 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 you cannot go on this epic journey. You're too young. Your older brother will go, right? So deferring responsibility to somebody else, right? So the older brother goes. And what the older brother does is he follows exactly the road of society. He acts selfishly. He does not share. He does not pay attention to others. He does not support other human beings and he fails. And the middle brother goes and the same thing happens. He fails. And the youngest brother finally gets to go, and when he does not follow society's rules. He does not tell the old man that he needs his own sandwich for himself. When he sees the old man who's hungry, he sits down and shares his lunch with the old man. He does not do it for reward. He does it because he's a true human. He's a human being, or maybe that's not the right word, but he has he's part of who we are, the whole group, humanity. And and so he shares his lunch. And because he shares his lunch with the unlikely supporter, some stories, it's a bird, it's an animal, whatever, this place, it's an old man. He shares his lunch with the old man. The old man gives him the invaluable piece of advice that allows him to conquer what he needs to conquer. So breaking, like not listening to the naysayers, not listening to the people who say, be selfish, keep your lunch to yourself, you have to look out for number one. He didn't listen to any of that. You know, he didn't listen to any propaganda. He just saw in man that needed food and said, "You need food. I can understand. I've been hungry before. Here's some of my food." You know, he didn't think about the fact that he needed that food to go further or whatever. He was living in the moment. And in that moment, he became rewarded. And his reward was, you know, the kingdom, the princess, everything he ever wanted.
Hmm. What I'm not sure if you have heard of Erich Fromm. It's a German author, pretty famous. He said both dreams and myths are important communications from ourselves to ourselves. And I think that's pretty fitting to what you just shared, Agnieszka, because that, seeing it like that, and also, you know, that goes really like into the solution, right? It is, wow, there's a kind of communication that is going on, that's inside of me. So a part of me is communicating to another part of me. And if I put myself in a position where I can actually listen to that voice, then, and sometimes it's not even so the myth or the mythical thing, then it's not necessarily even something that's being spoken word, but it goes beyond that. It's not only the spoken word, but it's also the word that is not being spoken, but it's that, which is unspeakable in a way, and which can be perceived, felt in a way, and which makes you, in that case of yours, which led to the decision of the guy, sharing out some food, regardless of what was on the outside, because there was a calling that came from, not through the ear, but that came from somewhere else, from a different part of himself. So I think, yeah, this communication from ourselves to ourselves, and then if that is the case, then what can heighten our awareness, and how can we learn to listen to that communication which is there. And how can we see if it's, how would you say, if it's clear, if it's clean, if the message and if that communication, if it is manipulated, as Mike, you were touching upon earlier, or if it is something, if it comes from a truth place, you know.
You
Yeah,
know,
and
even
go ahead.
worse, I'm just going to quickly add one tiny little thing. The older brother actually says at one point, he says, um, "Old man, you have lived this long and I never helped you. And so you don't need my help. You can live as much without my help. You don't need me because you've lived so long." And I thought that was so rude of him and so mean, you know. And then he ends up being turned into stone, which is, just rewards.
Well, I would say that story that you told does equate to something that when it comes to like evaluating myths and evaluating ideas in regard to how we live and observe our life. It's the old man that has lived the life and has gained the experience, that has the wisdom, that's from his own observations of his own experiences, that makes that wisdom worthy of the of being the key to the whole story, right? And that's really, I think, one of the part, or like, I think one of the big things that I would advocate for is people to really be living their life in that present, understanding that there are stories and is information from all different kinds of sources around them, that in some cases is motivated by you know selfishness and all those other things that can come into play. But there are also things motivated by love and joy and all those other things. And it is our own uh, opportunity and responsibility to evaluate how valuable that stuff is, and be open-eyed and open-eared and open-hearted to all that information, and then how it actually you know uh, compares with our own analysis.
Go ahead, Dennis. I know you want to say something. No.
No, I'm gonna say you can go.
I think that the stories have a blueprint for us, a blueprint for living, and a blueprint for what's important. And money, even though the hero gets the money at the end, money is never the goal. Money is never the goal. It's always love. It's always care. It's always saving somebody or making somebody's life better, or saving somebody's child, dying child. It's always something like that. The goal, the initial
Truth.
goal
How about
is
truth?
never. No, it's not even truth, because like the truth is, it doesn't change. You don't need to go on a quest to find out what truth is. That's kind of like trying to like open up a wound that's already healed. You need to go on a quest to find love and be in love, and share that love with other people, with the old man in the lunch, and with the old woman, and with everybody in the world. Just stand up and be a real person. Like, you know what, I don't even know if person is the right word. What's the allowed word these days? Humans no good, persons no good. Which one doesn't
Mankind.
depict mankind? Be a member of
Yes.
mankind. Come back to your family. This is your family. Humanity is your family. So come back and be a real person, a real mankind member. All these words, they mess with all these words.
What about that angle? Whether the myth is what you would call a lie, or whether it's truth, whether it's manipulated, or whether it comes from a place, that feels true and genuine to you, isn't isn't the myth itself teaching you, regardless of which spectrum, in which side it comes from, that in life, and that hints at the title of the show, right? Are you living a myth? That the life that we are living is truly like a mythical thing. Not even biologists can describe life. You see, and that's what they study supposedly. So there's like myth, in our very existence. There's so many things we can explain, so many things, but then, like modern science, is also, every few years there's something else, and then there's new ideas and new theories, and the old ones are discarded, and so. But from how I see things, like that which changes cannot be real, cannot be true, is a myth. So the only thing, you know, that doesn't change, that is what is true. So what is that which doesn't change? Certainly myth, whichever one, whether we perceive it as true and whether it's helpful or not. This is, it is really highlighting to me that, oh wow, this is something that changes. This is, it's in a flux, it's flowing. And whether how much I let this myth or that myth affect myself, that is under my control, right? If I take the step, if I take the self responsibility, if I bring the awareness to me, if I listen out, I can choose what to listen to, what makes sense for me, what will help me on the next part of my journey in this realm. So in this way, I start to see myths as something that potentially can help me to manage my life, to manage, my existence in this reality. And at the same time, um, the myth itself is not that. Is not that which cannot be described, which I truly am. So I begin to really see it as a tool that, that we can use, and that I would like to use, in a meaningful way, passing on, and sharing, what I have to share and what I've learned, and also, being able to distinguish it ever better, and to see, which one is enticing for me and which one will help me to step up and to, to continue on my journey. Yet, life itself is mythical and cannot be explained, and that brings me back to the part of myth which is beyond what can even be spoken. So that is a teaching that myths themselves give me. There's something to it that you cannot put in a book. There's something to it, that, is it true, is it false? I don't know, but it's, it brings me back to my own self. It has to resonate inside of me, and that is what really entices me about myth. This, wow, bounce back, on my mental level, on my heart, how does it feel, in intention that we spoke about the other week. It's like, oh, what does my gut actually say about this thing? Does it make, what does it do in my heart? Is it, what kind of vibe, what kind of energy, where does it resonate with it? My brain, like my cognitive understanding, what does it say about the myth, and can I research about it? So it's, but it always, it's bringing me back to myself.
Yeah, but if you think about it, oh, sorry, you're breaking up a little bit. Am I breaking up?
Well, it might be your side.
Can you hear? Okay,
Hello? Oh, are we back?
I hear you well.
We're here.
Sorry. Whose side is it? Is it me?
I think so.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah. No, okay, I think it's back now.
Yes.
So what I was going to say is like the stories that were told, like, when we're a baby, our mother tells us the stories that we should believe in. And then when we're a small child, our kindergarten teacher or elementary school teacher will tell us the stories that we're supposed to be living and who is a good boy or a good girl and how to be a good boy or a good girl or a good man or a good woman. And then, when you're 20, the university professors will tell you, who is a good woman, how to be good, how to be whatever, and then when you're older, it's the government, the TV, it's your wife, your husband, it's everybody's always telling you with stories. But when are you going to stand up and live the story of your own design? When is it time to stop listening to others and start listening to your own inner guidance and step into the story that you want to be living, and not be living other people's stories or stories that already happened to you? That's the worst one. Oh no, this happened to me before, so it's probably going to happen again. Who cares what happened before? Just live your own story now.
And it's that your own story. You make it yours. You make the myth yours. If you pass it on, right? So you get a story, and the one who told you that story is adding something to it. Although he or she might have accounted, told you the story the same exact way how it was written in a book or whatever it is. But even just how it comes at you and through whom it comes to you, there's something added to it. And the Joseph Campbell says, this is all I ever wanted, to help students and artists see myth as a reflection of the one sublime adventure of life, and then to breathe new life into it. And I found this
There
fascinating.
you go. There you go.
This
Yeah.
means that you know we write our own story, and you have the power to do so. So don't blame the bad myths and the good myths and the truth and the false that is out there for it. It's there for you. The plate is the dinner table is set, the buffet is set. Which one are you going to take? Which one are you going to pick? Are you going to pick and fill your plate and eat of it, and then you get bad stomach, you didn't like it, but you put it on your plate. So don't blame the others. But it's like, oh wow, you took this, I didn't like it. Okay, take it off. Put something else instead. But you adding something to it, something from yourself comes to it. Whether and then again, are we doing this consciously? Are we aware of that whatever we recount and whatever we pass on and whatever story we tell, whatever words we utter, this is part of our manifestation. We're manifesting our own reality, our own life, um, and we're influencing each and every one around us through that.
Yeah, I would say Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. The idea that you have to find a purpose, and really his account of living in a death camp for I think 3+ years in a place where the average life expectancy was about 60 days suggests very likely that purpose is such an important part of what your life is, and that is really like being able to see what the future is, what your vision is, and then creating the myth, the story that is your life, projected into the future, is so important to overcoming whatever it is that's in front of you. I feel like that particular story is a great one. It's a short read, and it really does kind of bring that about, that it is really us being proactive about the future, and us understanding that what we apply as far as our learning from the past to the present is who we become, and how we influence the future. And that's really the myth that we've got to live, is the myth that we tell ourselves about who we are going to become.
Nice one. Yes, true.
Or rather, who we are becoming in this very second, because the choice is second by second by second. Who are you
Hmm.
becoming this
We
second?
do have
Okay,
some
go, Dennis.
we do
Go.
have some feedback
Comment.
here. Um, Ryan posted, having access and prowess in the moment is a holy sacrament of awareness, yet leads us into potentially a slightly more vulnerable context when coercion sometimes factors in. And he continues, living in the moment is a unilateral context. As a unilateral context, this is problematic. Myth is the past, right? Hmm. Is myth the past?
Just
Well, I, I would feel it is the past and then you incorporating it and passing it on, you making it your present. Or you have the potential to decide to make it your present, or to let your to let the present that we are in, that we are all in this moment, because there's always only this moment that we are in, to influence it by that. I feel that is within our potential
What if you
control.
could curate your present? What if you could like take care of your present as if it was a garden? You water it, you feed it, you take care of it, you cherish it, you nurture it, and you create the garden that you want to live in.
Ryan continues, sometimes myth comes looking for you in your garden. That was my the garden thing.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Sometimes myth does come looking for you.
Yeah. And we are
Usually,
creating the myth of the garden, right? And if we do it right, we can create a beautiful garden, and we can invite,
totally.
our friends in there instead of the the, the less friendly friends. Rodain says learning from a past story is different from living in it. Some are unable to differentiate.
Indeed.
Or they're reliving, the same story all over again, the same myth all over
In
again,
many lifetimes, over lifetimes, reliving the same kind of narration.
until we
It's kind of
eventually
strange.
get it. And I think that's the thing, right? Like we're reliving the same story until we get the lesson, and then we move on to the next one, and then we're gonna relive that. And some people get it at the first, and other people they take longer. And some of us we want to stay with that too. Sometimes it's unconscious, sometimes it's conscious, because that's we enjoy that story, and we somehow, willingly or unwillingly trapped in it.
yeah,
We're
and I think
almost out
the
of time. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say in regard to creativity, it is really, a challenge to our own creativity to like write our own story and really live our own story and really be able to make commitments to the future and then create the circumstance that we learn to trust ourselves because we can see our future and we can then become our future and through that we learn to really trust ourselves and become confident in our intuition and the things that really
Inner
drive
tutor.
And that's really the benefit,
drive
right?
who we are.
That is the
Yeah.
benefit we can get from it, is to step in our own power, and to realize, that we have the potential to create the moment that we're in, and to to see the moment that we are in from a perspective that suits us, and ideally everybody else around us. So
Yes.
it is amazing to see, like, you have people that are seemingly in the same or in similar positions, and yet one, is totally destroyed and crying on the sidewalks, and the other one is, happily, I don't know, sweeping the road, and in seemingly complete harmony and balance with with everything. What is the difference? If the outside circumstances seem, similar, then there's much to learn from that. And I think myth, and the fact that we can understand and can see that we are creating our own myth, and that we have the potential to influence that in each and every moment, that can really, that can make such a difference in our life. And therefore, reflecting back to the initial question, or to the theme for the show, are you living a myth? um, I would say you are living your myth, your own myth, whether you're aware
Yeah,
of it or not. But we are living our myth, and
no
knowing
matter
that,
what.
that's powerful. And when if you're living your own myth, then let's enjoy it. Enjoy your myth. And if you're not enjoying it, then write a
Absolutely.
different one, or narrate the one that you're narrating right now in a way that suits you better. Makes you enjoy life. So I feel we're here to enjoy still, and if you can find a way to enjoy our myth, and make it so enjoyable that other people around us also enjoy it, without having to be pushy or so. But if you do something that makes you completely happy, and you live joy in each and every moment, you don't have to teach, you don't have to preach anything. Well, you're teaching, but you're teaching by doing what you do best, and what makes you be in harmony in the balance,
Exactly.
right? And then people will
Exactly. So I
appreciate.
have good news for you guys because the lady that was supposed to come a few months ago, the foraging lady, she actually reached out to me today and she said she was going to be available on March 10th. So that means that we're going to be having a foraging episode of Raising Excellence on March 10th. And that is definitely going to bring everybody closer to trusting themselves, being able to survive, not worry about, stuff like income or whatever, because you can learn so much from nature. So, even to supplement your food, it's a good idea, and it's fresh and it's wild and it has all the nutrients that commercial food no longer has. So it's a very good idea to supplement your food with foraging.
Yeah, what
So yeah,
if everything we really need is truly here already, on the physical realms and also on all the other realms and levels? If it's here already, if we just merely, if there's no true luck, but the luck that we perceive is just that it's perceived, and it's because we have not learned to tap into the natural abundance that is there. Mm.
Yeah.
perfect. And I think that's a good ending note for this episode.
Ryan says, yes, co-creating sounds like a definition of freedom. True. Yeah, co-creation.
Well, I would say that that I've been reading a couple books on thinking and creativity, and one of the things that uh, comes out of that is this idea that in a creative environment, people are generally very happy, and so kind of creating the circumstance that people are allowed to be creative is probably one of the best things that we can do and encourage. And it's not easy. I think I've been doing the innovation lab for 2 years, and it's like I've got to pry creativity out of people to get them to suggest, hey, an idea. But it's coming along, and as it does, I can see the smiles coming out.
I would say co-creating the myth of a world in natural abundance, peace, and freedom. Isn't that a project for humanity?
Let's all do it together. All of us, all 7 billion.
Ryan added, could
If
this
you
tie
believe
in?
that,
That's a myth. Could this
that
tie?
is a myth.
Could this tie in with what with what someone was going into on another project I saw about hallucinations and people hallucinating unknowingly? Maybe that ties in with myth. Maybe there's a, yeah, there's certain myths that are, on a level that is, that again, that we're not even, it's not a story that's being told like that, but maybe, they are level in their realms that we don't perceive in our natural state or unnatural state. Maybe the state we're in right now is not even, let's say it's just one. I don't even want to label it, but it's just one state we can be in. So I could see, that's a possibility. That there are myths that are perceived only if, together, with certain friends, with certain beings in certain states. Um, that is certainly a perspective that would be supported by many texts and by many accounts of people throughout history.
Absolutely. All righty. Well, I guess we're going to wrap it up at this point. I've got some people waiting for me. I think Agnieszka's got a something to do as well. So this might be a little bit shorter than normal, although we tried to
It's
start on time.
not. It's pretty much the same. Come on.
But with that said, really appreciate everybody's time and attention. I hope this was very useful for you, and please feel free to comment or ask questions or leave us comments and questions, and check out our website, raisingexcellence.live. You can
And we're
leave us
here
a
on every Wednesday at the same time. And every Monday there's a
sort of,
teaser. So it's pretty much the same time.
yeah,
Make yourself
So
comfy in
you
our living
can,
room every Wednesday.
yeah, you can come visit us every Wednesday. Anyway, I do have to go. I have to go out for dinner, you guys.
Thank you
I
very much,
figured it was something
everybody.
like that.
Monday we come up with another exciting topic. Looking forward
That's
to your
right.
comments and feedback. Thank you so much, everyone who was was here sharing and contributing.